Hey YouTube, what's up? Dr. T here, and welcome to the Altcoin Express and my hometown, St. Petersburg, Florida. It's taken a while for me to get this, but quite apparently so. When Ethereum goes up, everybody gets out of altcoins and they move over to Ethereum, and in the course of that selling, altcoins go down. So here with Ontology, which is the leading competitor to Ethereum, let's pick one point at the current range. As Ethereum goes up, as Ethereum comes down, Ontology goes up. As Ethereum goes up, Ontology goes down. As Ethereum goes down, Ontology goes up like a bitch. And likewise, just the opposite. When Ethereum goes up, this sinks down like a rocket. So I'd noticed this before, forgot about it. Now it's locked in, lock, stock and barrel. And I am in Ontology, and I am marching to the drum of where things are going. In order to do that, you need to follow the one that makes all the decisions for everybody, and that is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is on the turn, it's about to go down, and we are seeing that inversion take place. Ethereum generally won't go down if Bitcoin doesn't go down, but when it's on the uprise, Ethereum will overbuy on the upside, and correspondingly the altcoins, in particular Ontology, will dump heavily, as it did, and I got caught in that mess. But now, having recognized that, hopefully we can get on the swings, i.e. follow as Ethereum comes down, Ontology goes up, and this is done in part by mapping, oh that's bright, mapping the number of altcoins that are in to altcoins that are out on Binance. We do the count, there's 23 blocks here. 2, thank you, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4 and change. Ontology is starting to respond, this whole lot hasn't, but as it does progressively, as Ethereum progressively goes down, this lot which are linked to Ethereum will go up. But obviously they take a while to respond, depending on what their status of crisis is and their resistance levels are. So we're going to be popping the numbers in from here. Ethereum is stuck on 833 on here. There's a difference between Ethereum on here and Ethereum on GDAX, but I'm taking the Ethereum off of here. Now here we go. So let's pop in another number because this is moving. So we've got, that's actually come up a bit, but that's okay. We'll put it in at 833. We'll get some variance in the swings. And Ontology's 11016, 11016. So let's go and do the magic over here. And this should enable one to get out of the rut. And yep. And 3. And Ethereum's popped up a bit. 3. I need a good mapping here so we can see the definitive counter movements over a focused time range 11016. I need to redraw the map, and let's put a bit of space in there. Then we've got some, get out of there. Oh, what? We want 3, yes. Right, we need to just move this down a bit so that we can put data on without having to redraw the map every 5 seconds. Okay. This charts the variance between Ethereum and Ontology since the beginning of the rise from its major downswing of a month or so ago. I'm going to put as many data points on here as I can get to validate what's happening and how fast it happens and whatever else. So this is starting to move up, and we'll go back and look at this, put some light on the scene, and so did it just dump? Oh, it made a pullback. Well, it'll do this. It goes up and down, up and down. What on earth is that? But often once things are underway, they will continue apace for a while. I'm going to put this on hold till some more data develops. So this is one of these rare situations where it's the turnaround. Everybody's following Bitcoin's lead. As Bitcoin goes down, Ethereum goes down, and so in this case Ontology goes up. So you can map the seller off point on here if there's a turn just on when Bitcoin gives up its downside momentum, and then we can see this big block of green wanting to get in if anyone dumps it, but we know it's going to go up because Bitcoin's coming down, which causes Ethereum to come down. So if this follows along and this buys up a good chunk, hopefully we'll be able to find the turning point based on when Bitcoin and Ethereum stop going down and tend to kind of fallow out a bit. So as we can see, let's put a bit more light on the scene. Bitcoin's had a good buy up and it's having a sell-off. Did one sell-off, tried a challenge, got dumped, tried a challenge, really never got past it. Now these things can go either way, but maybe it'll just carry on down. It's not clear at the moment. We have some resistance to the downside to open to the upside. If you take a look at the big picture, you can see that for quite a few days there's been a very, very strong buy up, and the bulls are somewhat resistant to kind of give up their position, but eventually this is going to tank heavily as people want to get their money out. And we come back in again. So it's waiting to make its decision to go to the downside, which is the best guess scenario from my perspective. And this is very good for us on Ontology because this is just a quiet burn up. This won't go up unless Ethereum comes down. We probably won't establish that relationship now. It's taken a long time for me to get it into my head. When Ethereum goes up, this goes down. I've experienced it twice. It's not really caught on, but now it has locked on there. So if we follow the data points very carefully, we should be able to see the turn, hopefully. Ethereum's not going anywhere because Bitcoin's not going anywhere. But Ontology's been brought up a little bit, and it'll just be in a holding pattern there for a while, I think. Another point worth making in regard to Ontology on Ethereum, this is not really the controlling element as Ontology to Bitcoin, and on this other exchange, or these other exchanges, there's 3 major ones there with big volume on. These are the ones that are going to be really pushing the direction rather than on Binance itself. The little ones are just going to follow the big ones, so they will follow Bitcoin Well, this is against Bitcoin. So here, ontology on Bitcoin will follow Bitcoin, and then Ethereum will follow along for the ride. So when this one moves, everyone moves, so to speak. The rest of Bitcoin support levels, you can take your pick. Bottom of this block could be a good one. So 9,745 could be the first support level, and beyond that down here, well, that's probably not going to go down there, but we might see it wander off down here. So it might be a late night tonight, midnight already. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that this might just decide to just go apeshit up regardless of what's happening, and one's just got to sit around until it decides to turn around and go down, because as long as it's following this little trajectory, anything could happen. This aptly drives the point home how tightly these are bound. Ontology is selling off a little bit. Bitcoin decided to have a jump up, and of course, without whether it wants to or not, Ethereum had to follow suit. It's not following suit with any great gusto. I mean, I think Bitcoin is going up a little bit more so, but it has to follow suit no matter what. So if we take a look at Bitcoin on the World Coin Exchange, we can see that Bitfinex controls about roughly 45%, haven't calculated exactly, 45% of the total volume. So it has a major influence on where things are going. It rubber stamps where the direction is for the most part. We can watch what this is doing, and that pretty much will counterpunch everything else is doing if it's in opposition. So usefully can take a look at the one-day chart on here at the volume. Generally speaking, it goes down when the volume drops, and it went up and we did a little bit of dancing here. But there's one thing we notice, that is this volume going up higher than before on the rise, which pretty much tells you there's a lot of competition to sell off as there is to buy up, which indicates that there is resistance to the upside, as there's a lot of selling against the rising tide of Bitcoin's upside, and then boink, it goes down. Now this is a clear indication that it's treading water, and hopefully it's going to go down, because that's what I want to see it do. So for one-stop shopping, if you follow what Bitcoin's doing on here on all its exchanges, you know what Ethereum's doing. If you know what Ethereum's doing, you know what the altcoins are doing, as they will invert their activity accordingly. At least it seems to be the apparent way things go. So that's a new thing learned. I mean, you just have to wander around, pick things up, learn how to follow what the action is and where it's going, because these tipping points are obviously quite critical. I've taken a big spill on ontology because I didn't realize this, whereas if I'd known about it and recognized it, I could have just got out onto Ethereum, ridden Ethereum up to the top, then switched over onto ontology for it to come back up again. So you get a upside on the Ethereum going up, and you get an upside in ontology as Ethereum comes down. Well, that's the general principle which we're going to try to put into practice in the future. So over on TradingView, as we know, Bitcoin's going down, which is purple. Ethereum is starting to go down, and we haven't seen a response from ontology yet. So on the 7-day, we can see the last time it roofed at about the same point, it dumped down here, and it took a window of time of, it's hard to see time-wise on this frame, but maybe on the day it'll show us. Yeah, this is the corresponding downside, so that's from this peak here. That's like, well, really over here it takes a while. It takes a few hours to when here's a major rip down, and then the final rip down takes quite a bit of time, really. So here we see the big downside that's coming out. Obviously it's taking a while for Ontology to respond, but they're starting to notice it. What a wonderful corollaries, that's the right word, to be able to recognize where this inversion takes place, follow it, you know when to get on, when to get off, within a kind of a range anyway. You've got some perspective of where things are being controlled, i.e. here. This is going to come down some way down here. We don't exactly know how far it's going to come down, but we do know it's going to come down, and we can follow it and then think to find out where this changeover takes place. I mean, it's not at all impossible for this to be the beginning of a major sell-off. And we've seen the rise over the last few days, and traditionally when it stops going up, got sold off, the challenge did not make it. It's usually a prelude to a gigantic shit downwards. So hopefully this will start a major sell-off of Bitcoin and a rocket up of Ontology. That would be absolutely wonderful. And I think if it wanders down here and breaks through this, then I think all hell will break loose once it gets through this support level. And that's what at 9,729. It's not too far down from where it is right now. I mean, you have to watch this to sit on it and watch it to kind of get it into your brain and recognize these things. But on GDAX, it's setting itself up for hopefully a big downside. Less people want to get in the way, and that means it just goes kazoom down. We're now some 5 hours later, 5 o'clock in the morning. I've pretty much been up all night watching this, and that's how you learn. Bitcoin is still going down. Bitcoin went down and Ethereum to some extent for quite a while before Ontology even started to begin to think about going up, really. But it is still waning to the downside. There's plenty of room for it to go further. It seems to have broken through a resistance level that's kind of come in a bit. So yeah, there is its last kind of support level, and it's kind of breaking through that. It's like it hasn't reached its drop line yet, although it's tending to go there. So that may continue for a ways. On GDAX, the resistance waxes and wanes. Right now it's about 50-50. And Ethereum has tended to follow suit. And over here, it's still significantly overbought relative to these guidelines. Just getting a bit closer. All right, that's a bit better. to get these. Let's put that line further out. Where am I crossing over? I need a guideline. Right, just off that peak there. Roughly. It's good enough. So it's starting to come back into its range after it's been overbought. We go back into its time. So we can take a look at its moving averages. So it's tending to kind of go down with that lot. Sadly, let me get rid of the light. Although that's gone down quite a bit, with Bitcoin going down about 2.5% and Ethereum about 7%, I think. Ontology's been kind of slow to respond, and so too to the altcoins in general. 2, 3, 4. The altcoins have been on 4 clicks down ever since the beginning of this. Even though Ethereum and Bitcoin have gone down, they really haven't moved, so that hasn't changed. Ontology is probably one of the few that has moved, although it's way down here as far as its percentages are concerned. Way down here. But as a group, the altcoins have not been bought into, with the Bitcoin and Ethereum going down as of yet. The general plan is that we will stay where we are until it recuperates. Get rid of the light again. Oh, we've got rid of the light. So tracking the data of this. This is the relative data that I've been picking out for the last set since it started around here. So Ethereum's dropping off here, and slowly Ontology's coming back, but it hasn't had anything like a surge to get above it. And this time frame is a long time frame. This time frame is a few hours, so they're not connected in terms of their axes linearity by any stretch of the imagination. So that's the current update ongoing. So Bitcoin is starting to show signs of having found a bottom. It made a challenge and dumped, but we're now seeing a high top, high bottom. For the moment, that could change depending on the resistances, and they wax and wane, so one little element here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go that way. As we can see, they're starting to, let's put some light back on the scene. It's a nuisance this, but it fries my eyes, I can't deal with it. And of course there's fluxes between the ups and the downs. Currently it's in no man's land, but it's starting to kind of show signs of a bottom, because we're getting resistance to the downside, but there's also kind of some resistance to the upside as well, as the opposing parties decide which way they want to go. So right now it's in kind of no man's land, going whichever way it will. So it's important to make these studies and have them ongoing and collect the data to show the relationships between the up-down inversion of Bitcoin and altcoins as a group, and in particular Ethereum and Ontology. Ontology is the leading altcoin, outperforming Ethereum in recent days, but it's very volatile, So it's, it's early in the time frame of this technology, so one can't make too many statements about it. So back over to Bitcoin. I don't necessarily feel that this is the end of it. These runs can go on for quite considerable periods of time. As you notice that this one's gone up for a tremendous amount of time, and this is a short period of time. Even though it's steep, it will then regroup and then eventually find its kind of bottom of its range. Right now it's kind of even money down here as to which way it wants to go. And need to get rid of the light. Come over onto World Index, and it's broken through this bottom support level here. We'll go down to 1 day. Now you can't see it's off the chart, but it's quite visible that it's broken through its last support level just barely. And there's a lot of room down here, depending on how scary some of the bears feel the situation is. They might really push it down, or they might not. But a good bloodletting is what you need in order for this to kind of challenge the upper ranges of where it's going. You really need a good solid consolidation. And from a run-up like this, staggeringly in a day or so, you really need to give up a lot, I think. And I don't think it's in the bottom of this lot by a long way yet. So when you get a steep downside, like in the altcoin group as a whole, people are very reluctant to kind of buy up when there is like a sharp drop from Bitcoin, Ethereum. There's a lot of people who got burnt and they want to get out, so there's going to be a delayed reaction to the altcoin group picking up momentum and coming into focus as being bought into generally across its range. So we'll probably see, well, I don't know what we're going to see. There's no point in me predicting. This is kind of virgin territory. At some point the Bitcoin thing will terminate its downside and then kind of no doubt hover around, rise a little bit, and then this group will start to get some courage and come up, no doubt. So Bitcoin continues its journey south, now breaking through 9,500, which we see and here. Also, this has not resulted in a big shift in the alt market index as measured by how many clicks this is out of 23. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's made one move, 1 penny out of 23, but still there's no real commitment. There's an awful lot of negatives to get out of, and that's still working its way out right now. So currently Bitcoin is down 8.44% from its ultimate peak, and so Ethereum is down 8.44% from its ultimate peak, recent peak, and Bitcoin is down 4%, and it's still edging down. This is on TradingView as we see Bitcoin continuing to resume its downward trend, and Ethereum following suit, more aggressively so. The altcoins are slow to respond. They've picked up another little bit, and likewise so is Ontology. There being quite a bit of resistance to the upside as people want to get out as it comes up. And from the whole overview perspective, okay, this is the second time it's actually bit the bullet under 9,500. continuing to go. Now clearly there's a lot of room in here, a lot of room for it to find a new base of the bottom. This index is out of 23. There is 8 clicks down out of 23, so you've got a few more before 50% of the altcoin group on Binance are in the positive. And after regrouping, you can see this continued resistance that's being developed. Once it breaks through a level, it'll skitter down and leave a void here. Then there's usually a little backflip where there's no resistance on the upside till they regroup, and then this follows course again. So I think this is going to go on for a while yet. And finally we have our crossover in the Ethereum Ontology inversion, where as Ethereum comes down, Ontology goes up. We can see these step by step as it starts to take up its new position. I'll bring this chart up a little bit, show you the numbers. So it's just crossed over into positive territory with Ethereum, with Ontology starting to become outpacing Ethereum as the leading coin. These vacillate, of course, depending on the respectives, but it's a matter of where these roofings are, or the general average between the lots, so to speak. So here I'm dropping an averaging line so we can see some perspective. I mean, as Ethereum goes down and Ontology goes up, it's not quite a 50% middle of this line yet. So this is a guesswork perspective, but it tends to go through quite a few points. So we'll keep that currently as a, maybe we should pop it up just a little bit more. Yeah, just a little bit more. Okay, that looks a bit more reasonable. If this tends to extend itself down range, then it's ballpark. But anyway, we've now got a guideline that's sort of an upper reference bound. We can change it as is necessary. So let me show you how you measure the alt market. We're starting from the top here. We're going to count down from the top. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 and a bit clicks. And we're currently at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 and moving on. We're nearly 50% of the alt market back in positive territory. So some solid resistance starting to be built to the downside of Ethereum, the downside of Bitcoin, as the top end starts to regroup itself. So it's starting to look like we've found a bottom, and usually when that gets established, there'll be a fast rush up for a while, and then a regrouping. So on TradingView, the bottom was 9463 on Bitcoin. We're calling it bottomed out now. And on Ethereum, I'm taking the major blocks, not the bottom pullbacks. 757s. So we can now go and have a look at the ultimate downside. It's killing me, this brightness is golly. So our bottom on Ethereum was 757. 10%. That's from its all-time top. Recent all-time top anyway. And on Bitcoin, 9463. So pretty much we have it. The major downswing took Bitcoin down 4.6% and Ethereum down 10.3%. let's go and have a look at that on the big picture. So look at its 833 position. Let's bring this out a bit. We can actually look at its overall trend. Alright, it's just broken into its trading range from the big upside. What happens here afterwards remains to be seen, but its peak there, it was a little bit above the 833 I had, so 838. So that downside there is 10%, and the Bitcoin corresponding downside from its peak, local peak, it's been above this, was what did I say? 4.6%. So let's give this some color. Right, get rid of you. Yeah, we're getting out of our range, aren't we? I'll have to reset this. It's difficult. Which way to go? I'm gonna have to go right out. Alright. Generally, oops. Yeah, it's just about off of that green peak there. That's where I'd set it. So let's extend that up a bit. Just using this element as its range. So, okay. So Bitcoin is now tapping on the ascending bottom line, and Ethereum is coming back from its overbought position. Mind you, this is going to change because it is leading in regard to its advance over Bitcoin by a certain amount. Just put that up a little bit. Let's reposition this to, we've got the top of the solids, make it a bit broader. So it's coming into range. The last calculations I did put Ontology at an upside at 2.1% per day. Forget this because this doesn't really have any meaningful points to put on because it's not going anywhere right now. Ethereum at 1.42, drop the and Bitcoin at 0.81. I can measure those later on and see how they follow along. Oh, and our daily challenge. This thing here is to see if, as we go forwards, whether the Ethereum goes up in an accumulative base or an additive base. Additive base meaning that it'll go up 11 points per day. We've already crested this, so we've got money in the bank there, and we'll see by the end of the month exactly how much this is going up. So having established the bottom, from here on out, we're going to be following Ethereum's recovery and see how Ontology responds to that and the altcoin market as a whole. So back on Binance with Ontology, and these decimals, that's the current live position. I like to put it on the outer reach and see what these prospective plots are. This needs to be above that, I think, if it's going to make any big moves to the upside, and we know it's going to do that because in general there is a pattern whereby I've lost my data again. the pattern in the past whereby leading out in general ontology is starting to outperform Ethereum. Now this is a leap of faith. What I've been waiting for is Verge to go ballistically upside. I've just sold off Ontology, totally bought into Verge, or I'm trying to buy into Verge, because this is about to go ballistic. I think we see the bottom edge and how much there is there and how much resistance there is. It's been waiting around for a big surge, and this is a perspective. So it's a leap of faith, and you just have to make these guesses, because I don't think that Ontology is going anywhere for a while. Ethereum isn't going to be going up in a great rush, but this is ready for a staggering upside, which it can do. It's ready to do. If I can catch this, we could make quite a lot of money in a short period of time. So I'm totally bought into Verge now. It's just a matter of working out what the money is and waiting for this thing to prospectively go off like a rocket. So far so good. We're building a fairly substantial base underneath it for it to launch. Hope this continues along this progressive pathway. Verge has an important news day coming up tomorrow, so this might be a good preemptive move in time. The decimal ranges show us where the bottom is building relative to the resistance above, and this is continually starting to build up. I should think that once the word gets out that this is imminent to take off, if it does, there'll be a kind of a rush in here. So while we're waiting, let's take a look at the news, what's about to stir this up. Traffic Junkie accepts Verge because of Pornhub. That means it's accepting its coins into its infrastructure. One of the biggest online advertising networks, Traffic Junkie, announced that they will starting Monday the 7th, tomorrow, accept Verge as a payment option. Traffic Junkie is a very large advertising network that claims to serve over 4 billion impressions per day, and it just goes on and on and on. So I'm not going to go through all of that. That's the news that's starting off things tomorrow, and maybe there's a preemptive move before that. The other one just recently, we'll take a look at this. I haven't seen this yet. 3 things you should know about Verge. Alright, let's have a look, see. The digital world didn't have a lot of bigger celebrities than John McAfee. He's been an advocate of cryptocurrencies, especially for the ones that feature privacy and anonymity, as Verge does. Verge's roadmap is very clear. It privileges what users want, and it aims to get a token value of $15 before the end of the year. That's kind of remarkable. It's laughable. They might just get there because users are happy and they're getting a good experience on Verge. Consistency. Verge came to my attention when it was ranked at 60. Now it's at 27, which means it's been going up steadily. If you've been paying attention, you'll find that this is an excellent altcoin to buy right now. It's more modern, it fixes holes that older, more classic currencies have left open. The first priority of Verge is privacy and anonymity without involvement in the porn world, as EOS has done. This coin gives you the freedom to be public or not according to your wishes. It protects you always. Anonymity has been a core value since the first blockchain currency came into being, but Verge has turned it into a high art. They do it differently. They do it better. They take it further. In Verge, you can see every transaction, ever made without knowing who did it. Verge, the raw truth. Any corporation or foundation do not support... What? Their English is terrible. Any corporation or foundation do not support Verge's cryptocurrency coin. Can't even guess what they're trying to say there. It's an open source project supported by a community of competent enthusiasts. Do not disparage this. Just think Just think that projects are successful and effective as the, whatever that is, operating system work on. What on earth the hell is this junk they're writing? Verge's transaction speed is very high because it uses Tor, whatever that is, on top of the Android wallet. Granted, getting better transaction speeds than Bitcoin is not that hard, but they do it very well, and they do it over Android, which gives Verge access to most of the world's smartphone users. If you are on Android, you can do Verge transfers in real time while you keep your privacy and anonymity. It's easy, it's quick, it's safe. How much more is there here? Verge's market cap is around just under $1 billion, 900 million. It traded under 0.05 for some time and then jumped to 0.07. Let's move on from that. Among Verge's plans is to implement smart contract technology for Verge currency that will allow for developing dApps and to use the platform to monetize the contracts. It will get the investors' attention, mainly corporate and institutional investors, as they become interested in this coin. Demand and value will rise. Well, there you go. There's some aspects of the news. Incidentally, I got off on Ontology over a range, but somewhere 11076 relative, and there's a brick wall of resistance above it, which is nice to see. So the last time I was on Verge up here, I had 2 blocks well above its current level. There's about 200,000 coins. Of course, you'll get more as you go down. I've currently got 385,000 coins. Oops. So looking at the compressed numbers, we're starting to see a major block that's 60% up here. So that's 20. It could well surge through this lot. Of course, could do and do is 2 different things. Let's leave that in the background. I'm listening to. So we're on altcoin and the year, and look what we got here. Haven't a clue how that happened. A few views versus thousands. So the last 2 posts started to pick up some interest, and this one is going to be quite big if Verge takes off. That is for sure. So as we're waiting around for something good to happen, the altcoin inversion is now at 50% to the good. We can do the countdown. It's out of 23, so it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's the cutoff. 13. So we are over 50% altcoins on Binance in the positive. as of right now. So one more block to go. We're in the green, which is a good sign. We've got plenty of people below us, and most of the resistance in the near range is out of the way. Pop this up a bit, see where that goes. So yeah, it goes up a little ways, but we're moving in the right direction ever so slowly, painfully. Been a tense few hours, I can tell you that, when you kind of take these leaps of faith, but there has been a progressive increase on the Altcoin index. The price of XVG has gone up from relative 750, 752, 763, 764, and climbing slowly. And on Binance, it's pulled up and having its traditional little mini sell-offs, but it's getting support. And on, put a bit of light on that. So with some relief in the bag, I went out and bought myself some favourite ice cream, chocolate peppermint chip, and my favourite candy Rolos. And I'm going to sit here today, watch this, and boost my insulin through the roof. Yeah, well, wish me well, because this is not over yet. Oh, let's go back to the altcoin index has backed off a little bit. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it was ahead. It's kind of walked backwards a bit, but so far so good for my adventures. And there's more news. Spotify, Verge XVG, Spotify partnership, idea gathering mass support. It seems like the Verge project is not done with the cryptoverse in terms of announcements and partnerships. Only yesterday, Ethereum World News reported of 2 new listings of the coin. XVG is now available on Gate.io and BitBNS.com for trading. Also to remember is the notable Pornhub partnership that shocked the cryptoverse back in April. This was later followed by Traffic Junkie partnership with VGX on May the 4th. VGX payments on the advertising platform will be operational on May the 7th. Currently, the campaign... fuck off. Currently, the campaign to have Spotify accept XVG as a means of payment for Spotify subscriptions is gathering steam online and looks to be gathering over 3,000 votes on the Spotify community webpage. On the webpage, and where the request was launched 2 weeks ago by Verge volunteers, I'm not going to read all this stuff. In the communication on the Spotify webpage by some volunteer, we are extremely excited to announce that we have recently partnered with Mingy, a privately held company that owns and operates 85% of the adult entertainment industry's websites and applications. As we have seen with past events in history, what the adult entertainment industry adopts, the world adopts. The adult entertainment industry has paved the way for many huge innovations, such as the popularization of VHS tapes, the internet, as well as we know it today, virtual reality, and now cryptocurrencies. With all that being said, establishing this partnership will inevitably ensure a massive increase in demand for a direct way for consumers to be able to purchase Verge XVG direct with their credit, debit and bank accounts. That sounds interesting. And is that the same news here? Yes, it's just the same news being repeated. Or was that the same thing? Oh, let's go back to the other one. New partnerships that could see Verge become a major global player. This is kind of a repeat of things. Let me read it for. No, there's nothing new there, so I'll just move right back. Now, the main purpose of this post was to study the aspects of the what I'm going to call the altcoin BitCoin inversion cycle. Namely, when Bitcoin goes up, the altcoins tend to go down. When Bitcoin comes down and Ethereum comes down, the altcoin group as a whole tends to go up. Now, what really establishes the whole of this cycle, I don't know. That's why this post is continuing to be going on, now short of 20 hours. And we can see here, out of 32, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's reached just over 50%, but it is still lagging. So I'm continuing this post because I want to kind of get some understanding. If you can understand the fundamentals that control the altcoin, Bitcoin cyclical inversion, then you have the underpinnings of making a lot of money. And this relates to Ontology, which does have an inversion respect to Ethereum. Basically, when Ethereum goes up, Ontology tends to go down, and when Ethereum goes down, Ontology tends to go up, as displayed in the chart down here somewhere. And these things you have to study. It takes time. You have to get data. You have to see what's going on. So this is the respective movement of both coins since the bottom of everything, and more so locally. This is when I started to collect the local data, and you can see Ethereum at its bottom. Beg your pardon. You can see Ontology at its bottom and altcoin at its top when it reached its maximum ever value of around 630 plus. And throughout today's following, which is still ongoing, it's been going on for 20 odd hours, this has tended to fall and this has tended to rise. So we can see that relationship. It's not as high as it was here, of course, and it's still ongoing. It hasn't really taken off yet. And then there's the underpinnings of what control that, which I'm just about to go and look at a little bit more deeply. So we need to go and look at the controlling features of to do that, we need to find out which is the major controlling exchange and currency. So we'll come into Ontology, and we can see that Ontology is controlled mostly, or to a significant extent, by Bitcoin on the Binance exchange, but to some extent it's controlled by whatever this is, just the Ontology to the US currency on this other exchange. It's on a lot of exchanges. That's good for it. Somewhat on Ethereum exchange. So there's a lot of contributing factors here. Then maybe the top two are the big controllers. Now, as far as Bitcoin is concerned, let's stop there a minute. You come over and see what controls Bitcoin. Bitcoin's volume is mostly set, its price is mostly set on the Bitfinance exchange, as it has more volume, pretty much 2 7s of 14. Yeah, it's got more volume probably than all the rest put together. 260 to 500, that's 260, that's 520. It's got like 45+% of the whole volume. So Bitcoin's price is heavily influenced by sales on the Bitfinex exchange. Wherever this goes, the rest of it sort of tends to follow. GDAX is amongst the other top 2 contenders for influencing the role. You need to understand the underpinnings of your coin. What controls your coin? If it's primarily linked to Bitcoin, then the Bitcoin interaction through its major exchanges is what controls your coin base. Now, although we see the inversion with Ethereum, as I've demonstrated before, tends to go up more. When Bitcoin goes up, Ethereum tends to go up more. But nevertheless, the upside of Ethereum is controlled by the upside of Binance. All these mechanics you have to get to understand, get them ingrained, follow the various exchanges to see what's going on, understand where the flow of the cycle is. I mean, I fortuitously caught the top of it, and we've been following it all ever since, and they're going to continue to follow this until we find out what the mechanics are underpinning that altcoin the altcoin inversion cycle, because that's important, very important, because if you can identify a coin like Ontology, which is going up and peaks out when Bitcoin reaches when it's controlling influence on GDAX, at least on the currency that I'm exchanging it through. What influence is that? And you can learn to get off and get on the onto Ethereum as it rises. Then you've got this means of swapping and changing, but also there are times when it gets overbought and gets sold off. You have to familiarize yourself with the mechanics, and right now Ontology is probably the best coin to have in this range, because it's the only coin that outperforms Ethereum, as we've been showing through my data collection. So to get some predictability, it's not just one-stop shopping. You've got to go from one place to another place, because it's controlled by various sub-factions of influence, from the exchange that controls Bitcoin to the exchange that controls Ethereum, and so on and so forth. Right now, Bitcoin is seeing some resistance. Now, Ethereum is not going to go anywhere while Bitcoin is having some resistance. This is on GDAX, so this is going to kind of hang in there for a while. When this goes through, Bitcoin will go up. Once again, it's the controlling influence of Bitcoin that influences Ontology. So it's quite a complex business to get your head around. We can go and take a look at Ethereum and see what that's doing. It's kind of free range at the moment, which by that I mean there's neither a resistance or a support in either direction, in part because it's not being controlled by either of these right now. So I'm going to continue following this and try and get to the basis of understanding it. The other part of this is I took a leap of faith and I moved into Verge, because Verge is a coin which at the moment is kind of oversold it's in the backwater of nowhere, but it is something that has a staggering future. I believe in what it's being written about, and that is the second part of what this post is following. Once again, know your coin. What controls Verge? Well, Verge is controlled almost exclusively by the value of Bitcoin on Binance. That's where all the volume is for Verge. It's got more volume here than all of the rest put together. So that's its controlling factor. And that runs through Bitcoin. As we know, Bitcoin is controlled by what's going on in Bitfinex. So once again, these interacting parties will synergize when they come into alignment, and one has to keep an eye on that. Bitcoin is going up slowly. It's just had a big downswing, so it's not going to climb very quickly, and as such this will control to some extent Verge's upside. When you've got a whole base of a multiple of a series of exchanges controlling the coin, the one where I've got it on, which is on Binance, on Ethereum, which has a very minor contributing factor. There's 2 million. This is in dollars relative to the other exchange, whether it's in its value of its currency. So 2 out of 30 is a very, very small contributing factor. So when we go and look at Bitcoin on Binance, and I've got it linked to Ethereum, this is not influencing anything. This follows the trend of the major influencing party, and the major influencing party is Bitcoin on Binance. And we can see Bitcoin on Binance here, which is currently well, let me go back to there. We can see it's kind of in an entrenchment range. So you really have to understand and study these phenomena, and when you get to have this understanding, and you can see the way things are moving and which controls what, then you've got a means of predictability within a certain time frame. As this is going here, that's going there, we need to move from here to here, and that is the underpinning of how to make a ton of money. It's not just playing potluck on some silly little coin somewhere because it happens to be going up. You really have to have the grasp of the fundamentals that control everything, and that's what we're following. You're going to follow this along until this does something, see why it does it, and follow the other aspect of this along the BitCoin Altcoin group inversion cycle to see what influences that. It's very, very important to understand and document these. That's why I'm continuing to run this post. It's been ongoing, I said, for 20 hours. I stayed up all night long pretty much. Once one gets this, you have an understanding that will enable you to make a lot of money. So let's go through this again step by step. It's important to understand it. I'm defining it for myself, and I'm hopefully educating you. Now we see it going down here, and it's not, oops, oh my God. You have to understand what's going on. So we see it's going down, and we want to know why it's going down. So on GDAX, we can see that Bitcoin has reached some resistance, and it's having a bit of a sell-off. And on GDAX, which controls the value of Bitcoin in part, sorry, on Binance, which controls the value of this to some extent, mainly, it's going down somewhat, and Bitcoin itself is controlled by what's going on the Bitfinance, and to some extent, basically what's going on in the Bitfinance exchange. Bitcoin has taken a little bit of a rise here, meeting a little bit of resistance, having a bit of a sell-off, and it's these collective cycles that are influencing and controlling the coin's value right now. So once again, we're looking at Bitcoin on Bitfinance, which is the primary controller of what Bitcoin is doing. Here is its local range since the bottom here that I've drawn my drop lines on. And we can see where its top ever value is, which comes in at, just get this in alignment. Yeah. So there's some spikes here. 9. Just transiently broke 10,000, I believe. Maybe it didn't. You have to appreciate that the prices on the different exchanges vary because they're isolated to that exchange volume and purchase up. So Bitcoin's max on Bitfinex is 9,990. And as far back as we can see on this maximum range window on GDAX, its top value is 10,098. So it's broken through the 10,000 barrier on the GDAX exchange, but not on the Bitfinex exchange. Oh, I may be wrong there. This may be the descending line to its base, so I apologise for that. In which case, our regional top is over here by the looks of it. So that would be it, and that pegs out at, with that spike. That spike pegs out at 9,948. So Bitcoin has not broken through the 10,000 barrier yet. It's had a few good goes, and we can see this local very significant upside a few days ago, and that's when I caught on sort of making a prediction, if you will, that it was going to go down, and everything follows along with that course. So taking a look at this top, I get these confused here. Alright, this is the regional top area. I've got this on 1 hour setting. You can't get these, you can't move this around like you can and on the trading windows. So let's move over to one of the other platforms. Yeah, so on TradingView, and there are different moving averages. I've got mine currently set at 180 days and 30 days. So we can see this uprise where the 30 days well above the 180 day, and now it's starting to track close to it, which is a significance because it's obviously getting somewhere near the top. And here we see the cross. Just shortly after it made its peak, here comes the cross, and I guess it was somewhere about there I called it that it's peaked out. And if you can do this, this is the crux of being able to make the decision. It's time to get out of the major coin and into something else. What that something else be is another matter, of course, and that's its current course from there. Let's go back over to GDAX. Now GDAX has two ranges on it, a 12 and a 26 moving day, and you can't move this window around. So once you've gone past the event, it's very difficult to deal with projections. That's why it has to be in the moment. So the comparison between the TradingView platform, which you can move around, and this one, and comparing the appropriate settings of your moving averages gives you some indication. And on this hour setting, once again, we are seeing just shortly after it, well, it peaked up here. It was easier to see on TradingView. Clearly, as it closes in on its crossover and it's on its downside, and I don't think you can see it on a lower range because it's coming from up here and you're kind of stuck. So it's sort of in the moment. That's what I'm working on now, is to try and understand best how can you predict when you get a top, because that is crucial to being able to get out of the major coin into an altcoin and look for the altcoin to hold up as the majors fall. So we're just going to follow along, see how things go. And in regard to the altcoin group on Binance, it's the relative averaging, I guess, between those that are being bought up. Here we've got one that's being bought up, which is the top end, another one that's just been bought up, so that's on the positive end, and you've got the others on the bottom which have just crested and they're selling off down to their range. So somewhere, I think the 50% mark is probably a good evaluation of where this mix is. It's rarely you're going to have an alignment where everybody's bought up and selling off at the same time. Clearly it's going to go down when the major exchanges go up, but to try and find this transitional balance, this is a tricky thing to try and understand, and I'm kind of thinking that maybe the 50% mark is going to be somewhere where its inversion characteristics will kind of wander around. So once again, this post is studying two things that are not connected. One is the relationship between Ethereum and Ontology and the inversion of these two. And the other one is the emergence of Verge as prospective newcomer to the top group when it gets going. So currently, and they're all controlled by Bitcoin anyway, what sets up the circumstances for Ontology to do a big rush? Now that is quite unclear, as it's done this major upside rush here and it's not clear what causes this to happen. And of course there's a lot this is my local trading range for it. It's kind of in a flux, having been sold off, and it's waiting to perform back. It's rather difficult to get one's head around, but you just study it. When Bitcoin goes on a rush, Ethereum goes on a rush. When Ethereum goes on a rush, the altcoin, well, when those two together go on a rush, the altcoins get dumped and people get into the majors for the upswing. Now when that sort of normalizes itself out, as it's currently done, and Ethereum is on a rise here, and Ontology is coming off a bottom of having had some upside, so there's quite a fair amount of resistance to it gaining momentum, because people want to get out. They want to get out of Ontology. Woo, boy, that's bright. Let me just get there. Set these back to where they were. Have a look at Ontology. To make progress in this business, you really have to sit here for freaking hours and follow things and understand what is going on. So Ontology, and then come over and look at what's happening here. It's kind of having a little buy up right now. It's having a little buy up because Ethereum's going up. So that there are these counter influences. When it's a local upside, they'll follow the coin to some extent. When there's a gigantic rush, everyone wants out of the one into the other, and it's where this balance is right now. The majors are moving up slowly under resistance, and this is trying to regain its grouping under resistance. So there's not going to be any explosiveness out of this. Now what causes the explosiveness out of Ontology, I don't know, and that's why I continue to kind of following and see if anything can be identified. So I'm going to put some numbers in the chart as Ethereum is just kind of breached, just kind of reached 790. It's just knocking on the 790. It's just knocking on the door. We'll wait for a minute to get there. There you go. So it's hit 790, and Ontology is on 11,851. 11,851. So let's go and put that on the chart. See how that plays out. So here's the local point. As I said before, everything before this point here is over a long time range. This is over the last 24 hours, as we see generally Ontology coming down and then breaking up, and I keep getting these inverted, I'm sorry, as we see Ethereum coming down to its minimum and it's breaking up, and Ontology starting to go up. What I'm looking to try and find out is what causes this upside? It's clearly as ontology on Ethereum goes up, ontology comes down. We're in that perspective. So what makes it go up? It didn't go up big when ontology went down, so we're in a local region of something controlling it, and that's why it's important to follow along and get these understanding of these characteristics that give rise to it having a rush. The yellow line is just a guess average between where it might go in its next rush up. Clearly the rush up is an overbought situation, and if you're sitting on that, then that's good for you because you've just managed to gain a lot and you can get off it, but it's not predictable. So the other side of it is just collecting data right now, and since I've moved on to Verge, it's kind of getting some basis of understanding is what is influencing this upside, and as we've seen, it's controlled by Bitcoin, which is influenced in part by on Verge by Verge on Binance Exchange, which has got more of the coin's volume, but that in turn, Bitcoin, is ultimately controlled by the price of, or the influence of the Bitfinance exchange on the Bitcoin value. So we've got two competing things here. This controls Bitcoin more than anything else. And as far as Verge is concerned, this controls Verge more than anything else, which in turn is controlled elsewhere. Tongue twisters, yes, but I want to see what enables it to do its spike. And I think it has unbelievable potential as I've been going into time and time again. Take a look back over some of this, where it may be going. We have to go back further. Oh, sorry, this is its local window, right? So this is its local window, and it's sector regroup. All right, we're back on Verge. Now, I'm focusing on Ontology because it's the only cryptocurrency that is outperforming Ethereum under certain circumstances. And I'm focusing on Verge because it is positioning itself for some kind of explosive action down the road. We've seen the news, if you follow this along, and there are some prospects for it to really go somewhere. They've got these connections agreements with platforms that will be using the Verge coin, and as people buy into that, obviously they're going to be buying coins, it'll buy it up somewhat. So this was the end of the there was the big surge in Bitcoin in the early part of the year. This has had a major surge since, and then has come down into its current valley, and one's trying to see what is going to influence this to take off. It's just dropping out of its, well, this was the major trading range until it got dumped by virtue of Bitcoin taking a big nosedive, and this is controlled by Bitcoin. So we're down here somewhere. We'll put that in the respective window, and this is where we're following. So I'm just kind of waiting around for it to do something, because I think this has got an upward. We've already seen it spike once. We've already seen it do a, where was it? Here. It did a pretty significant burn up from what, the 900 to, no, that wasn't the one. So this is the recent big upsurge just at the end of March, where it had a humongous upside, a little kind of selling off, and then a final reach to its peak. You can quite see this is like 10, and here you've got 26, so it went up 26% over those few days. So it has humongous potential for upgoing, taking on a big rise. But once it does, it's going to be forever before it ever gets going again. And that's why one is sitting around here waiting for something to happen, because you know, when you're going to get a 10 or 20% upside. Now Ontology's done this. It has. I missed it. I got off on Ontology onto here, and Ontology went 25% up, and I missed it. And that was just very significantly unfortunate, obviously. But this has the same potential, and who knows beyond that. So I'm currently on here, and we're waiting around to see if it will go somewhere. It's in this little narrow window, and thank God it's reasonably stable. It's just dropping out of its window because Bitcoin is taking a little bit of a nosedive. Now, these controlling elements are local. Verge itself has a major contributor on the Binance exchange through its connection to Bitcoin. But as we know, Bitcoin is heavily influenced by the Bitfinex exchange, which is the major controlling entity. That said, coins have their own life, where they can just go ballistically off the charts for no particular apparent reason other than speculation. And that is sort of what I'm waiting for here. Some speculation that it's going to go somewhere big, and it just goes way out of range of this and becomes disconnected from the major coins and in its controlling influence. And that's why I'm here. I'm taking a guess that this will happen at some point in time. When it does, it will be big.